Right. I know in this advanced technology that we have in our country, that it's frankly incredible that there are still races, elections to be called in several localities throughout the country. That's right. It's been 2 weeks since Election Day, and there are still races that they haven't decided the outcome. All right, so we're going to check in with Brent Keilen. He's Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at FRC Action. He's going to give us the latest. Brent, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony. Good to be with you today.
All right, so we know that the GOP will be in control of the Senate next year, but there is an ongoing race in Pennsylvania that has not yet been called. Well, it has been called, but it's being the results are being challenged. Tell us where that race stands and what the outlook is for the Senate, and then give us some of these House races that are still outstanding.
Absolutely, Tony. Starting with the Senate, like you said, we know that the Republicans will control the U.S. Senate next year. The big question is, will they have 52 seats or will they have 53 seats? And that's going to depend on this Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race. And Tony, I'll get to the specifics of that in just a second. I think sometimes it's easy when you say, well, we already know the outcome of party control is one seat that important. The answer is it really is. If you look at a chamber the size of the U.S. Senate, it's a lot smaller than the U.S. House, and every vote really does make a difference. So even this one Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race, it's important. It's really important. So where do we stand? Well, like you said, they have called it for Republican Dave McCormick. He was taking on incumbent Senator Bob Casey there. But the rule in Pennsylvania is that if the race is decided by half a point or less, there's an automatic statewide recount. Well, this race is actually right now the margin is 2/10 of 1 point. So in other words, the current margin of victory is 16,000 votes out of about 6.9 million votes cast, which is just incredibly thin. So they're moving into that recount phase. Some counties started on Monday. Some counties had until today to start that. So everybody is at least started with that. We should, Tony, know the results of this by next Tuesday, and I think those should be announced a week from today, so day before Thanksgiving. I will say, I think for Dave McCormick, he is in a very strong position. It would be very rare to see 16,000 ballots either overturned or a margin like that changed in a recount. But you definitely have to keep your eyes open in a situation like this.
So if the Republicans hold on to that seat, that gives them what?
That gives them the 53 seats going into next year.
Which is, they still, for cloture votes, they've got to have 60, but for a lot of procedural things, it's 50 as they've changed some of the rules. So that does give them a little bit of a cushion.
It does. And Tony, other factor here is that there are a couple of very moderate Republicans. You talk about senators like Murkowski and Collins. If they don't want to, go along with the conservative move, you do need that cushion. So this is very important.
So this basically disarms them from being able to hold the Republican majority hostage if you have a third seat.
It really does. It absolutely does. And that's why every single race like this is just so important. If you look at that race, we also have seen some news coming out of the court system in Pennsylvania. The state Supreme Court, they're actually just ruled on this. There were some local Democrat-controlled election boards who had been trying to count hundreds of ballots that either were not dated or were not dated properly. The state Supreme Court just stepped in on Monday and really rebuked them pretty sharply and said, no, this absolutely is a violation of the law. So good to see things like that, but just another reminder why we have to stay on top of these types of situations, Tony.
All right, Brent, what's the House look like?
Absolutely. So right now, Decision Desk has called 220 seats for the Republicans, 213 seats for the Democrats, and then there's two uncalled. No surprise, those two uncalled races are in California. One of those is California 13, where the Republican is up by 227 votes. The other one is California 45, where the Democrat is up by 314 votes. So extremely thin margins. Tony, that being said, there's a couple races that have been called by a decision desk still worth keeping our eye on. In Iowa, there's a congressional race where the Republican won, but by 800 votes. That's heading to a recount. In Ohio, there's a Democrat held seat. Democrats probably going to win by 800 votes. That's also heading to a recount. And then the Alaska at large, because of their ranked choice voting system there, we need to keep our eye on that as well.
You know, Brent, when you look at those amounts of votes in a congressional district, 800, that's one or two churches. If they're voting and engaged, can make the difference in the outcome of these elections. We were talking about that going into the election, how every vote matters. Brent, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the update.
Thanks, Tony.